those are good ideas, right? But what you can get, what you can make out, what you can make of this explanation is that if the student is able to keep a conversation, for example, with you, if you ask him questions and if you speak English, then if the student responds, okay, correctly, is because the student understands, right? So that's why speaking and listening always go hand in hand. They go together. You can think about someone, for example, you can think of a better way to assess listening than speaking. Speaking. Of course, for reasons of, I don't know, administrative, the way that the courses are designed and everything, you cannot actually record what the students respond when you ask them something. So it's difficult to keep a record of what the student, how much a student understands of what you say. But maybe as a teacher, you know that Carlitos is really a good student because he understands everything you say, and you know that Juan is not as just as good, right? But in a real classroom, in the real process, we have to assess listening. But then I ask you, then this question arises, what and our first volunteer already said, being listening, a receptive skill, how do you know that a student is really understanding what he's listening? Is this, in other words, is listening an observable skill? Is it something that you can observe, something that is physical?
Maybe I consider that it could be both when you are evaluating your students through a listening test, because as you know, when we are doing this listening test, maybe we can measure what the students have understood about maybe the topic that the speakers are talking about. But I consider that these skills, maybe speaking and listening, these are some skills that you can develop through the practice, because you cannot, yes, maybe you can know a lot about grammar, but it's different when you put into practice, when you put grammar into practice, because one thing is when you are writing something, but another thing is when you are expressing something, when you try to say something. And maybe we as teachers, we cannot say that, okay, he is really good at speaking, maybe because we are talking about, I don't know, future things. So we are using the grammar to future tense, but maybe the students are going to practice something related with the modals, with the things that are used in the future tense. But what happens if the student is going to talk with a native speaker? It even happened to me, because maybe with my friends I can practice something, but when I'm trying my speaking with a native, it's something really different.
It's completely
So
different.
maybe, yes, the context is different, because you are going to feel maybe kind of nervous. Maybe you will think that the other person won't understand what you are saying. But yes, I think that these skills you are going to develop through the years by practicing. So,
3 years.
but yes, but one thing that you as teacher can do is like taking some tests about listening and maybe some speaking. But the speaking, I consider that it could be something like it's a free topic to speak, because with free topics we can express our ideas, and we can express what we think, and we can use the vocabulary we have right now.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. Yeah. You have mentioned some very important. You have made some very important points here. No. Well, the fact that when you are in a real situation, no, listening is sometimes even more important than speaking. No? Like I said before, no? Sometimes we give more credit and more value. We think that people who speak fluently and with little accent are more valuable than those who have good listening skills. But in the example that you are portraying, no, listening is more important, no? Because if you have this ability to decode what the person is saying, okay, maybe of course it's going to take a few seconds for you to decode, and then maybe try and put all your ideas together. But in a real situation, listening is more valuable than speaking, no? Yeah, and you're right when you say that they develop with time, no? With time, with practice, with not necessarily, like you said, asking students to repeat a drill, no? Because drills are very easy, no? You say, for example, okay, we're going to do the future. So what is this sentence in the future? Change this to the negative form. The student can memorize the drills, and okay, but that is not really speaking, no? Speaking is, like you said, when a student is faced with a real situation where he has to talk about something unexpected, or like you said, maybe it's a free topic, and then students have to demonstrate what they really know, no? Is when they put all the pieces together, no? So yeah, interesting, no? But the analysis is really interesting, and so you would, I'm sure that you would agree with me that assessing listening is very difficult, no? Because one thing could happen, no, that you, like you said, no, that there are ways that you can measure how much a student understands. For example, you say you prepare a test, and students have to listen, and then they have to choose the answers, or they have to write something in response or something. Yeah, but the problem there is that sometimes performance is not exactly the same as competence, no? There are students who have very good qualifications. They have a high level of competence in, for example, listening, but the day of the test, for example, something happens. Maybe they're sick. The track has you have a problem with the track. No, some kind of inconvenience, etc. So measurement or performance is not always the same as, is not always a reflection of how much the student really knows, and that's something that we have to take into consideration in all skills, but more particularly in listening, no? In listening. Great. So well, a lot of analysis has been done, and that's great. The next question is, what are, no, how does the process of listening take place? How does the process of listening take place in your brain? What happens when you listen to someone speak English, for example?
According to our personal experience, Prof.
Yes, yes, no. Yes, what you think, yeah, and what you experience, because what you experience is what most people experience, no?
Well, in my case, when I listen to some professors, um, I tend to translate in some cases, not at all, but in what cases, well, when I didn't understand one word, and for that word, I can understand all the context. So in some
Yeah.
cases, some professors tend to speak faster. Well,
Faster.
uh-huh. No, fast. I'm sorry, fast, really fast,
Yeah.
and
Really.
and I can follow what they are saying, or
What they're saying.
what they are talking about. But
Huh?
currently, I can notice that professors at the UCE, they try
Uh-huh.
to command the language in an easy way for the students. For
Uh-huh.
example, they try to pronounce in a right way, and they don't speak really fast. They try to speak really not really slow neither, but
Not as slowly either.
they try to find I don't know how to say un punto de
The right
equilibrio.
pace. Yeah, the right pace. No,
Ajá,
the right
to
pace. Uh-huh.
to provide a comprehensible input.
Comprehensible. Yes. Yeah. Great. Great. Yeah. And what happens? Yeah. That is, for example, in a class. No. Yeah. But what happens if you, for example, all of a sudden, for example, you turn on the computer or the TV or something, and something in English pops up? No. Yeah. What is your how does your brain work to decode what is happening? What is the process that happens in your mind or in any person's mind when they listen to some foreign language? No? Because something of what you said happens. No, I have here the the, the PDF, no, the document. No? And number one is what happens in our brains is this. No, you recognize speech sounds and hold a temporary imprint of them. No, so you recognize, no, the sounds. That's the first thing you focus on, you concentrate, and then you try to hold a temporary imprint, ¿no? O sea, una impresión por segundos, no? And then you store all this in your short-term memory. No? So of course this happens in seconds, no, in nanoseconds, we could say. No? And then what happens in the process of listening? What is another thing that you experience, no, in this 2 or 3 seconds that you listen and then you want to respond something? Try and think of as a student, no, when you first went to, when you were in level 2, level 3. Now, of course, now you know more and you know the technicalities and all that. But,
Maybe, Prof, when a message
yes.
in English comes to you, you try to decode a message, because when we started learning English, well, in my case, for example, someone told me, "Hey, how are you?" And I didn't know what it was. So I tried to translate word by word, translate this message, because I used to say, okay, how, it's como, are you, estás tú. So I
Yeah.
suppose that you
Okay,
get
great.
to catch the message, and then you try to decode the message in order to answer. But I think that this process, when the message comes to you, yes, it is related to the decoding.
Decoding.
Yes.
And that, thank you very much. For example, you can use bottom up, no, linguistic decoding skills, or sometimes you need to use top down background schemata to bring some kind of interpretation to the message. No? And well, this is a little technical, and of course you know this. No? So when you try to get this plausible interpretation to the message, okay, you try, or your brain tries to assign a literal, okay, and intended meaning to the utterance, no? Because maybe you hear something, you decode the no, quickly in your mind, you make a picture of the components, and you know what, in your mind, you have a picture of how the sentence, for example, is written, no? But many times, most of the time, English has a lot of this idiomatic expression. So maybe you understand the message, but you don't know if it's, you understand maybe literally, but you don't know the intended meaning. Oh, well, that has to do more with semantics and grammatics and all that, you know? But that also happens in our minds. Yeah, and so, well, just to complement this, you know, well, this is on page 130. When we open the document, you will see that. But what happens in our brain is this, no? First, the one, we recognize speech sounds and hold a temporary imprint of them in our short-term memory. Number two, we simultaneously determine the type of a speech event that this is, no? For example, monologue, interpersonal dialogue, transactional dialogue, etc. No? Yeah. That is being processed and attend to its context, no? So then we try and see the real context. So you see, well, you analyze quickly, no? Who the speaker is, the location, the purpose, and the content of the message, no? So it's a lot of things, no? It happens in seconds, but it's a lot of processing for the recipient, no, of the utterance. Okay, and number three is what I read first, no? You use bottom-up linguistic decoding skills and or top-down background schemata to bring a plausible interpretation to the message and assign a literal and intended meaning to the utterance, no? Right. And so, well, I know that this is technicality, but if we're going to see how to assess listening, we need to know what listening really is and what the process is, and what are the basic types of listening. Okay, and so I want to finish this first session by asking you the types of, what are the basic types of listening? What are the types of listening? For example, if you're considering developing assessment tasks and procedures for listening, what are these three types? Let me see how many types. Four types. No? 4 types of listening that we have.
Appreciative, emphatic, comprehensive, and critical.
Critical. Yeah, and how? Where did you get that? Or from what point of view are you?
I just look it up on the internet.
Great.
But
yeah,
there are many classifications.
Well, maybe,
but yeah, tell me.
Yeah, well, maybe I should clarify the question. The question is, what are the types of listening performance? Sí, me faltó la palabra performance.
Okay.
Perform.
This is on the PDF. Those are
Aha.
the intensive response.
Exactly. Intensive listening, responsive listening, selective,
and extensive.
and extensive. No. Yeah, I guess that when you studied, well, I don't recall the name of the subject, but I'm sure that when you studied, for example, reading, no, methodology in reading, for example, methodology is the word. Yeah, you saw intensive reading, extensive reading. No? Intensive is used for students to understand the composition of the text. No, for example, the characters. They learn to identify the setting, those specificities of the that are part of the text. No, so that is intensive. And extensive is when you read for pleasure, no, without paying attention to those elements of grammar, syntax. You just read because you like the story. Okay, and both, no, intensive and extensive, contribute to your better handling of reading. Well, the same happens with listening, no? Listening. Well, but listening, as you can see, it's a more complex process, no? So intensive, no, is when you listen for perception of the components. For example, here the teacher can ask students to pay attention, pay very close attention, for example, to intonation patterns, to rising sound, rising intonation, falling intonation, phonemes, word, discourse markers, etc. No? Responsive is when you listen to a relatively short stretch. No? So someone tells you something, for example, a command, and if you understand, for example, if the teacher tells you, please come inside and sit down. So you come in and you sit down, okay? Or if they ask you something to check that you understand, you say, yes, I do. So you're responding, no? Selective is when you process stretches of discourse, such as monologues for several minutes. Okay, well, we're going to see that in detail after the first releases. And then extensive, no, like it happens in reading, in listening, no, it's similar. You listen to develop a top-down global understanding of the spoken language. No? Extensive performance ranges from listening to lectures, to listening to conversations, and deriving a comprehensive message or purpose. Listening for the gist, no, for the main idea, no? Making inferences are all part of extensive listening. No? So the idea is that you know these 4 types, and so that you make a better use, a better choice when putting this to make to make an assessment, no? Because all of them together give you a better picture, no? I mean, that the student really knows, I mean, that the student really understands, okay, the task, or that they understand, no estaría bien, but if they understand listening, no? Or if they have developed this skill of listening, no? to be maybe more technical, no? This. Okay. Okay, so this is just an introduction. No? I wanted you to get a global view of what the document is about. Of course, that's only a few. These questions and analysis is only the first 4 or 5 pages. No, but hopefully in the second hour we can break down these questions and see the most important, the most relevant information on page that begins on page 170. Yeah. So Abby, how much time do we have before?
Yes, we have less than a minute. So yes, the session is gonna over. It's gonna be over. Prof?
So I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. You can work in your okay, in your documents, no, in your device, you guys open the document and read from page 117, where this begins, no, all the way through page 120 or 20. Let me see. I want you to read all these aspects. You know, what is listening, the process of listening, basic types of listening, all that. No, as much as you can. Right? You don't need to do. You don't need to read everything. Just for the main idea, for the gist, right? And if you can go read a little more as preparation for the next items, great. No? And so, and I'll see you guys at 5 to 7, okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. So
Okay.
the first session dismissed, no?